The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is a robot with countless irrelevant menu options. Which is why with USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable, all at the touch of a button. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply. USAA.
Welcome back to Rams Up, your favorite LA Rams podcast. We are part of the Fans First Sports Network, and you can follow us on YouTube at youtube.com/@RamsUpPodcast. I'm your host, Mark. I'll be joined often by my football guru, Ian, along with a bunch of other friends of the show on occasion. Let's get to it. Hey, welcome back, everybody. Mark from Rams Up here, episode 705 of Rams Up. This is audio only, no video on the YouTube channel for this one. Now, Scott and I recorded a mock draft where we second-guessed each other, and went pretty good. I didn't want to share that as audio only. I don't think it serves its purpose very well, so I'm going to kind of recount what happened, but also going to share some other things. And we'll talk about some of these picks that we made. It was an interesting mock draft. It was one where, if you haven't seen it, we took turns making picks, and we also took turns second-guessing each other's picks, making alternate picks than the ones that were chosen right before us. Kind of confusing, but the important takeaway is, what did we come away with? What was the draft haul? And what were the second-guessed picks that each of us made? Before we get to that, it is episode 705, and I wanted to talk about a player who wore number 4 for episode 704. Didn't get to do it, so I'm going to talk about 2 players this episode. I'm going to talk about Jordan Fuller, who wore number 4 for a bit, also wore number 32, and I'm going to talk about a player who wore number 5, Nick Foles. Now, Jordan Fuller, 6th-round pick in the 2020 draft, and he turned out to be quite a steal. He was a 17th safety drafted that year, and man, he played really well. Competed with Nick Scott and Terrell Burgess for a starting job, and Taylor Rapp got banged up. Eric Weddle decided to sit out due to COVID, and sure enough, there was Jordan Fuller, the starting safety on opening day against Dallas, alongside John Johnson. And what I remember about that game, if my memory serves me correctly, there was a big play in that game, and another rookie, CeeDee Lamb, went in motion from left to right. They got a pass out there to him, but Jordan Fuller had read it perfectly, trailed CeeDee Lamb across, and made tackle short of a first down, if I remember it correctly, in a big play by Jordan Fuller. And he turned out to be, for a 6th-round draft pick, wow, he was an extremely good player. In 2024, left as a free agent for the Panthers. He got banged up a lot in his tenure with the Rams. Wish him well. Hope he's doing well with the Panthers. Jordan Fuller, our number 4. And number 5, Nick Foles, one of the best backup quarterbacks ever. And on March 10th, 2015, remember, he had won a Super Bowl with the Eagles, but the Eagles traded him to the Rams, and a 2015 4th-round pick and a 2016 2nd-round pick to the Rams in exchange for Sam Bradford and a 5th-round pick. Now, he ended up battling Case Keenum for the starting job. He did start 11 games, though. Rams went 4-7 in those games. It was a rocky year for Nick Foles and the Rams, Jeff Fisher's Rams, of course. And then when the Rams drafted Jared Goff, Nick Foles wanted out, and the Rams granted him his wish, and he was released and moved on to the Kansas City Chiefs. Nick Foles, our number 5 for the then St. Louis Rams. Never made it to LA. Hey, if you've been listening to the last few podcasts, watching on the YouTube channel, you're probably well aware that Ian is a big fan of Jalen Milroe. If we could land him in the 2nd or 3rd round, Ian would be all in favor of that. The skill set through the roof, cheat code for sure. Just needs to work on his accuracy and come in and work behind Matthew Stafford for a year. That would be ideal, and we'd be really excited if that happened. And maybe Ian's onto something, because Cameron DeSilva reporting that Todd McShay saying that the Giants are considering trading up in front of the Rams because the word on the street is Sean McVay likes Jalen Milroe. So there you have it. Maybe they're all watching Ian on the YouTube channel and formulating their opinions along with him. But very interesting. That's pretty early for Jalen Milroe. But maybe the Rams can entice the Giants to trade up with them if they really want Jalen Milroe that bad. But of course, if the Rams do want Milroe, they're not taking the Giants' call. They'd have to trade up in front of whoever the Giants are trading up with, and then it's just a rabbit hole you get into. Just pass on the quarterback in the first round and figure it out another way. And in Vinny Iyer's latest mock draft, he writes for Sporting News, he had the Rams taking Luther Burden. And, I've gone back and forth on Burden. I just think there's better options at 26, not feeling it. Really talented. His production did drop off from 2023 to 2024, but that may have been more due to a teammate emerging, sharing the rock with another wide receiver, hurt his stats for sure. But I don't know. I'd prefer Matthew Golden. But Golden, Egbuka, and McMillan were all gone. So do you settle for Burden? I'm not so sure. I might have gone in a different direction. Back in a second with our mock draft. So let's get into this mock draft Scott and I pulled off. So once again, we alternated picks. And then each time one of us made a pick, the other one had an opportunity to pick a different player, had to pick a different player. And it gets a little confusing, but the main takeaway is what did we come away with? What were the prospects we drafted and how we did here? And, these alternate picks, this approach gives us an idea of, alternate results that we might have had if we had gone in a different direction. Now, the first thing we did was make a trade. We were planning on making a trade and sacrificing maybe a 6th-round pick that maybe the other team doesn't deserve just to get out of that 26 slot into the 2nd round. But lo and behold, the Giants popped up with a trade offer, and they gave us the 34th and 65th pick. The Rams gave up the number 26 overall and a 6th-round pick. So the Rams ended up with the 34th in the 2nd round, the 65th, 90th, and 101st in the 3rd round, a 4th-round pick, number 127 overall. Still no 5th-round picks, unfortunately. And then in the 6th round, picks 195, 201, and 202. So, Scott had briefed us on Sunday about the cornerbacks he likes in the draft for the Rams, guys that would be boundary cornerbacks. And no surprise, that's the direction Scott went with his first pick. And, you drop into that 34 spot, and Trey Amos, that's about where he belongs. And that's who Scott drafted. And I think Scott and I are in agreement. The 3 positions that the Rams are probably in most need, well, let's say 4 positions, cornerback, an elite cornerback. I'm not sure we really need a lot more depth there. And wide receiver, replenish the youth there with Puka talking about retiring. I mean, that's a ways off. That's not really the reason. But Devontae Adams getting up there in the years. If someone gets banged up, we need a top-tier wide receiver as well. We need an inside linebacker with some range. And we need a tight end to take over for Tyler Higbee when he moves on. So what did we do here? So Scott takes Trey Amos, and, I had the backup pick. What would I have done? And I'm not allowed to draft Amos. And I drafted another cornerback we talked about, Maxwell Hairston. So Amos probably the overall better cornerback, Hairston more of a burner, but I think I'd be happy with either one of those guys. And then in the 3rd round, that number 65 overall pick, I had the first shot. And some of you won't like this, but I took Harold Fannin Jr. And Elijah Arroyo was still there, but I opted for Fannin Jr. And Scott went the wide receiver route after seeing me draft a tight end. He went with Jack Besh. And man, you're going to love this guy out of TCU. He's going to remind you a little bit of, a lot of Rams wide receivers that we've had recently, guys that just get a few extra yards with the ball in their hands every time. Puka, Cooper, and we've seen a little bit of that from Jordan Whittington as well. Now we get to the third round, the second pick in the third round, number 90 overall. Scott was on the board again, and he went linebacker, Demetrius Knight Jr., and that's a solid pick. You need a guy with a little bit more range than the guys that we currently have, and Knight fits that bill. And my backup pick, I went running back, added some speed, Bashul Tutin. And I think I've been targeting this guy for a while. And Scott pointed out that he prefers R.J. Hardy over Tutin, but I took Tutin. And then the next pick, I was on the clock, and you know what? Tutin was still there. So maybe I selected him too early as the backup at number 90. He was still there at 101, and I made him my actual pick. And Scott came back with a big defensive tackle, Joshua Farmer out of Florida State. And, you know, that's a solid pick, a bigger body. I think he's about 305 pounds, and, you know, can play in the 3-4 or the 4-3. Got some scheme flexibility, but Rams are going to, you know, I think the Rams can improve that group a little bit. The starters are fine, especially with Poona Ford on board. But Farmer was the backup pick. And then Scott came back in the next round. This is the first pick in the fourth round. And he added some more speed. I had already added Tutin as the official pick. He added Isaiah Bond. And he's a speed demon out of Texas. So between Tutin and Bond, man, if Ram fans are looking for a little bit more electricity out of this offense, we just accomplished that, I think. My backup pick, I was really happy with. Fourth round offensive tackle, Ajani Cornelius, and out of Oregon. And he's a guy that he's got starter potential. Could be the next right tackle, moving in for Rob Havenstein when he decides to hang it up. I assume that'll be within a couple of years. So Cornelius is the backup pick. Now I'm on the clock for the next pick, and I took just a wild-ass guess on this one, guilty as charged. I took Simeon Barrow, who was, in fact, the highest-rated player on the board. And it turns out he's more of a interior pass rush specialist. I'm not sure that's what the Rams really need, but hey, I'll take one of those guys any day of the week. But I think we'd be better off with a bigger guy like the guy Scott picked as the backup pick in the third round, Joshua Farmer. Now, after picking Barrow, Scott went a backup pick at offensive line as well. He took Jack Nelson, the offensive tackle out of Wisconsin. So we haven't added an actual offensive lineman yet, but two backup picks. But hey, Scott's up next, and he did the same thing I did. You know, I had Tutin as my backup pick, came back in the next round and actually selected him. That's what Scott did with the sixth round pick, number 201 overall. He selected Jack Nelson, and I went interior offensive line as my backup pick, Carson Vincent. And then the last pick, I had the selection, and I went defensive line. You know, we had added Barrow, and already I went defensive line again, a guy that I've had my eye on, maybe a little bit of a reach here in the sixth round, Ty Hamilton out of Ohio State. And Scott came back and selected another linebacker, Nick Martin. So the end result of this, the actual draft, Trey Amos, Harold Fannin Jr., Demetrius Knight, the linebacker, Bashul Tutin, and Isaiah Bond, some speed there, Simeon Barrow, an interior pass rusher, and then Jack Nelson, the offensive tackle, Ty Hamilton, the defensive tackle, two Big Ten trench players there for our Rams. The alternate picks, Maxwell Hairston, the cornerback out of Kentucky, Jack Besh, the TCU wide receiver, Bashul Tutin, the speedy running back, Joshua Farmer, defensive lineman, Ajani Cornelius, offensive tackle, Jack Nelson, offensive tackle. Now, we wouldn't actually do that in the real draft, but these are the backup picks, remember. And another offensive lineman, this one on the interior, Carson Vincent, and linebacker Nick Martin. I thought it went pretty well overall. Interesting approach. kind of painful, the actuality of it, making these picks and trying to sort through it. But hey, just mixing it up a little bit. We'll come back with some real mock drafts. Ian and I have to do one here pretty soon. We'll get that done this week, most likely one of these weeknights. Hey, we've been focusing on potentially drafting a linebacker in the first round, Campbell or Walker. Neither of them are probably going to last to 26, of course. If one of them did, you can't pass them up, I don't think. But we haven't really talked about linebackers we might target later. And these two guys that we talked about in this mock draft are players worth talking about, especially Demetrius Knight Jr., South Carolina linebacker, 6'2", 235, so he's got that perfect size, really. A 6-year college career, which he may get dinged for, actually. Forced 3 fumbles in 2024, played in all 13 games, 10 starts. Expected to go in rounds 2 or 3, so if he drops into the 3rd round, you got to think about a guy like this. Plays with passion, doesn't have that range, that elite range like a Fred Warner or a Campbell or a Jalon Walker, guys like that, but certainly more range than any player we have. So this is a guy we got to think about. And he apparently had an incredible game against Alabama, so he stepped up against elite competition. As one NFC scout said, he's not perfect, but just watch the tape in that Alabama game and you might fall in love with this guy. The other one was Scott's last alternate pick in this mock draft we just did, Nick Martin out of Oklahoma State. Now, he's not highly regarded. That's why he's going in the 6th round potentially. But he does have a chance of making an NFL team and contributing as a linebacker, a rangy linebacker, and special teams. He's only a 2-year starter, and he missed some time this past season due to a knee injury, so not a lot of snap counts, not a lot of experience. But if you look back at his 2023 season, it's pretty impressive what he got done, his productivity. Pretty aggressive, maybe sometimes overly aggressive, runs himself out of plays, but again, a rangy guy. Yeah, a little bit on the smaller side, a shade under 6 feet, 221 pounds. Better blitzer than he is in coverage, and a guy that can shine on special teams. Hey, take a flyer on this guy, run him out there in certain situations. Certainly going to be a big time special teams player, and maybe you get lucky. Maybe you end up hitting on Nick Martin and he ends up being a contributor to this defense. So we don't have to be totally dismayed if we miss out on a guy like Campbell or Jalon Walker. Both those guys almost certainly going to be gone by 26. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe do we really want a linebacker in the 1st round? I mean, I sort of kind of do, but only if it's one of those guys, right? So let's start looking at these linebackers in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds, perhaps, even the 6th round. That may be what it comes down to. Out here from Rams Up, we'll be back with a mock draft and lots of other good draft content. It's getting close. We're getting close to Christmas Day, otherwise known as Draft Day. Out here from Rams Up. That's going to do it for this episode. Remember, you can reach us at ramsuppodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget about our YouTube channel. Till next time, keep the horns up, stay safe, and have fun out there.